And welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to exit your highly appreciated business, real estate, cryptocurrency, or other highly appreciated asset so you can create and preserve more wealth. I'm your host, Brett Swarts. In each episode, I am joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're also streaming on expertcresecrets.com. That's expertcresecrets.com. Hey, I'm excited about our repeat guest. He is in Southern California. He's the former VP at a really, really well-known place that you might know about called PIMCO, one of the most respected wealth groups in the world. And he spent a number of years there with a guy named Bill Gross and learned a lot and helped grow PIMCO to one of the largest and most respected firms in the world. He's now with Anfield Capital, where he focuses and helps financial advisors, institutions, and endowments and manage their money, or help financial advisors be a money manager for them. Please welcome to the show with me, David Young. David, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Brett. Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you all again. And I guess I'm officially now a repeat participant or contributor, so that's great. You did give me a material demotion. I started at PIMCO as a VP, but when I took the PIMCO retirement, as we call it, which is a good thing, I was the executive vice president, but that's okay.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I got to get those titles right. Started as a VP, EXP. Hey,
titles refer, yeah. No, it's all right.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that correction. And so for our listeners, I can get to know you maybe for the first time, although there's previous episodes you can go back, and I highly encourage you to go check those out. We talk about overcoming false beliefs with the Deferred Sales Trust, and we go through a number of different things. But for those who are getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Sure, happy to do so. Yeah, the long and the short of it is, and actually before we dive into that, Brett, I am reminded by my compliance team that I should read a brief disclosure. Is now a good time for that?
It's a great time. Go for it.
All right. So apologies here. I will read. This is we have lawyers and compliance folks that make sure that we do the very best job we can for our clients and are able to work with people of the highest stature like Brett. And with that comes, in the modern world, some additional requirements. So Anfield Capital Management, LLC is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. This interview is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, an offer to sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy any securities. While many of the thoughts expressed in this podcast are stated in a factual manner, the discussion reflects only Anfield Capital's beliefs about the financial markets in which it invests portfolio assets at this time and may change at any time. Oh, that was a long one. I need to take a breath in there. The descriptions I make are in summary form, are incomplete, and do not include all the information necessary to evaluate any investment. Prospective investors are referred to our Form ADV-2A for a more detailed discussion of risk factors, which can be found on the SEC's Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website. We may have to put this on the screen later. It's //advisorinfo.sec.gov or provided upon written request.
That's exciting, David. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And thanks everyone for hearing that.
For it. It's important.
And I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it because David is going to bring the wisdom right now. So we are talking about common sense due diligence with David Young. That's what we're going to tie into. And by the way, Anfield Capital, you can find them at anfieldcapital.com, anfieldcapital.com. But David, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus before we dive into the subject today?
Sure, happy to do so. So I've been in the business now for, gee whiz, we just did all the bios and the marketing materials. It's 35 years. Don't know where the time went, but it's been a crazy time to be in the markets over that very long period of time. And so started off on the really, I guess I would call it the private financial advisory side. That was way back in the 80s. Went to business school, went to what we call the buy side, which is, where you have a pool of assets and you're managing money on behalf of institutions or endowments or foundations. Worked for a boutique firm. I think I mentioned got the MBA in there. Went on to PIMCO, which we discussed briefly earlier, for sort of 15 years. Met my current colleagues here at Anfield. Had the opportunity to move overseas and help build PIMCO's business in Europe, Middle East, Africa. Came back here sort of in the 2006-07 timeframe. Still with PIMCO, saw an opportunity to take a form of an early retirement with the express goal of returning to the finance faculty at the University of California at Irvine's Paul Merage School of Business. I'm not teaching here currently. I'm on extended hiatus, if you will. The business is all consuming in a good way. But then also to create a firm that allowed us to work with networks of financial advisors and trustees and other financial intermediaries and advisors like Brett and his group. Maybe just, kind of the goal, the mission was to rediscover our passion for the art and science of managing money. The very big firms are great. They're wonderful. PIMCO, wonderful firm, love them, good friends and all that. But at that point in our career, it felt like we just wanted to go in a somewhat different direction. So that was 10, 12 years ago. And since then, we've been working with financial intermediaries and then in turn, their underlying clients, trying to bring that institutional quality to a market that maybe didn't have such easy access to it before Anfield Capital.
Amazing. So much. Yeah. So much there and so much wisdom to share with our audience today. So thank you so much for being on the show. So let's dive right into, common sense due diligence. What would be the first question or step or process for you, David, as you're looking at something that requires some due diligence, whether it be a stock, whether it be maybe real estate, maybe just a general asset? What would be the first common sense thing to do for you?
For me, and lots of people will have different views on it. It really comes down to understanding the people. If it's a registered stock of IBM or Apple or whatever, it's understanding management. I think management matters. You don't notice them in good times. You might notice them more in bad times, but good management can get companies through tough times. We've just seen some tough times here with COVID, certainly. So to me, I try and look through the wrapper of, is it a stock or a bond or a private placement or a pooled real estate limited partnership, or is it a deferred sales trust type of instrument? And look inside and say, who are the people behind it? What is their experience? What is their credibility? What are their credentials, if they are relevant? Credentials aren't always part of the mix. Can I trust in this management team? Are they transparent? So for me, people are big because numbers tell a certain story. Numbers can be manipulated. Unfortunately, it happens. So we always want to be on the lookout for that. But to me, it's about management and or sponsors, depending on the nature of the instrument. Get to know them, get to understand them, check them out thoroughly, and I think you're a big step towards being where you want to be. So that's job one for us.
Excellent. So the people, right? The background, how transparent, their numbers, their credentials, getting to really understand their management style, how they've done things, what they're doing. So starts with the people. So that's step one. What would be step number two?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about, maybe we'll just focus on looking at like a mutual fund or a listed company. If there's a little more sort of right down the middle of the things that most of your listeners might be looking at. And this is germane too, because these are the things that would go inside of a deferred sales trust, which I know is also a topic we'll touch on for today. Then we want to look at certainly at past performance is always relevant, although for me, not the number one item. It's really, I always look at what I call the 4 or 5 P's: people, we talked about. I look at their overall business philosophy. Do they have, a clearly stated business model? Are they, competitive, maybe even dominant in their segment, right? Their industry, right? So you take a little bit of a look at the competitors. And then, as I mentioned before, a third point there would be the past performance. Past performance is relevant. It is not indicative of future performance. Past performance could stop at any moment in time. However, success tends to be, I believe, the outcome of smart people working hard and doing the right things on average over time. Bumps in the road for sure. You look at the performance of a stock, look at the performance of a mutual fund and the team managing the mutual fund. I would look at the performance of, of a team that was creating, deferred sales trusts and other forms of installment sales to get a sense of, is there a track record that I can look at and I can measure it, and I can see consistency. Strong periods of outperformance are great. We all like them. Periods of underperformance, not so great. We don't like them. They're often understandable. But for me in performance, I'm looking more at the consistency of results. High flyers are great. We all love it. This stock's up 104%. Well, that's fantastic. But if it can be up 104, it can be down. Well, it can't be down 104. That's mathematically not possible. But you know what I mean, right? So for me, it's really about a consistency of performance. But I would say past performance is probably the second thing I would be looking at.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes sense. And I like the way you say that success is the right people working hard consistently and doing the right thing over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really that where the character, and you see the leaks, right? Or I think Warren Buffett says it well, when the tide goes out, you see who's been skinny dipping, right? It's easy perhaps to have some good performance, and when everything is going really well, you truly see the character and the consistency over time when the tide does go out. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, and maybe I got it from Warren Buffett. I don't know. He's a pretty smart guy. So maybe I just tend to say that, when the water level goes down, then you see the old tires and the beer cans and the, random tennis shoes, and how they got in there, I don't know. But the truth will out over time. But we also have to understand that, in a competitive world, in a volatile global environment, global economic environment, volatile markets, I've never shied away from an investment or an investment thesis or an investment management team that has had periods of weak performance. That is oftentimes a buy signal. I'll give you a little story on that, if I may. Amongst my duties at the University of California at Irvine, one of the courses I have taught for a number of years is a course in portfolio management. And I always start off with number one, okay, let's talk about due diligence. And these are MBA students, so they're 25, 30, 35 years old. By the time they get to me, they're second year finance track electives. So they're full on gearheads and proud of it, right? And then they've chosen a career path and they're on it. They tend to come from engineering, physics, math, or other hard science backgrounds, maybe a finance background. Anyway, so I always start off with, here's 5 or 7 things that you should be looking at when assessing an investment management or an investment, right? They're the things we're talking about now. And I want you to rank them in order of importance. They always put performance number 1. And it's funny because it's really not number 1. It's number 3 or 4, as we have discussed. But then we do another game. It's basically it's kind of like a pick the manager game. So I give them, it's usually from a past, a mutual fund kind of ranking service, maybe like a Morningstar or something like that. And we, show them these 20 or 30 different mutual funds. Here's the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year performance track record, other such relevant things. And we say, give a little bit more information. So pick. I would say 60-70% of the class will pick the one with the best recent performance, 1 or 3 years. I know what's happened because I'm looking back in time. They don't know. We say, okay, great. I usually pick the one that is third quartile, not the top quarter, not the second quarter, not the bottom quarter, but just below median, right? If they that would be my typical pick, and I beat them almost every time without without fooling around with the numbers, the point is that that high flying manager, isn't probably going to stay a high flying manager, or that high flying stock probably isn't going to stay a high flying stock forever. It will have its ebbs and flows. And oftentimes it's picking the manager or the style or the investment that's right now slightly out of favor, where you can see a consistent, pattern of success. There's a pretty good chance they're going to come back up to the top of that distribution over time.
Yeah, very well said. It makes me think of a question on back when you said when the either the tide goes out, the water goes down, and those tires and those old shoes are showing up. I'm curious, what maybe tires or old shoes do you maybe anticipate showing up in the next 6, 12, 24 months that folks should be aware of?
Oh, well, that's a big question, a broad question. Let me take one slice of it, and then we can broaden out from there. The water in this case is government stimulus, which is, if we'll continue on with this vehicle, really a tidal wave. This is a tsunami of money and liquidity and stimulus. It's in the form of low interest rates. It's in the form of checks just right into your bank account. Right? Look at that. It's got free money from the government. This is great. Right? It doesn't get any better. And I think that water level will eventually subside. First, they'll stop putting more water in. And then that water will be consumed. It will evaporate, or it will be, burned up like fuel, or it'll soak into the ground or whatever, but it will eventually find its way to wherever it's going to go. And then we will see at that point, what is the real overall health of the U.S. consumer? Right now, we'd normally be on consumer watch. We're not right now because the consumer is floating in their backyard pool, in a inflatable, multicolored giraffe with a place for your beverage of choice, and then the weather is fine and the water is perfect, and it's like, this is great, I'm floating around, and that pool is money. And so no concerns about the consumer at this point in time. That will eventually come to fore. But the thing I think that will be revealed will be how much damage has been done to the internal plumbing, the internal structure of the U.S. and global economies. How much real job destruction has happened? Not just technology rising to the fore and people, feeling more comfortable working from home, and corporations being first required, now more open to that concept. But I mean, if you really kind of think through all the ramifications, it's probably a longer discussion than we have time for today. You're going to ask yourself, what happens to that dry cleaner on the corner of the busy intersection just when you get off the freeway before downtown? No one's going downtown anymore to work. What happens to the convenience store, the gas station? What happens to all those jobs? As some folks have. So to put it in a nutshell, what has been the amount of damage to the internal structure? Firstly, of corporate America, how they operate and what they make, what they sell it for, who they sell it to, how they sell it. That feels like it's changing a lot, but also very importantly, because our economy is largely made up of people, right? And 2/3 or more of the U.S. GDP is consumer spending, and that's driven by jobs first and foremost. What's happened to the structure of employment? What jobs are available where, requiring what skills, at what sort of pay scales? Right now, that's being masked in a positive way. I'm for it for now, by government stimulus. But when that water level of that stimulus goes down, then we're really going to figure out, have we created a new, what would be the word? Have we created a new layer? We would call it a cohort. Just got to use fancy words, right? A new cohort of or underemployed people here in the U.S. as a result of all these restructurings. You've all heard the stories. Restaurants can't get people to come back and work, even though they're open now, because, well, they're just making more money sitting at home, playing video games. I don't know the real damage there.
Wow. I mean, that was so That was so insightful. And I love the way you put that. The water is the government stimulus, and it's been a tidal wave, right? And there's people sitting in their backyards. Perhaps they put that pool in with that money, right? They got that
In some
check. And
cases, they did. If I
yeah,
had a picture of my inflatable multicolored giraffe flotation device handy, I would send it to you, but I don't happen to have a picture handy.
yeah, no, that's I think that's great. And it's kind of sobering to think about. Yeah, what's the real damage to the structure of the employment and the future of employment and the future of jobs, and that is it's hard to, it's going to be, I think, a hard pill to swallow, and it's going to be, when is it going to come? I don't know, right? And but thank you for sharing that. So now let's shift a little bit to the deferred sales trust side of things with due diligence. So applying some of the things we just talked about here, with the people, the background, the credentials, the past performance, the philosophy, right? Maybe even competitors. If someone's looking at the deferred sales trust and wondering, it's something I should potentially offer my clients, right? Or talk about, or even something I might do myself. What would be your thoughts on that?
For us, it really came down to three factors. So again, it's a transaction type. It's a legal structure. It's a wrapper. I don't mean to minimize its value or importance. Wrappers can be very important, but it's a wrapper that creates this certain set of behavioral characteristics. So it's not really about due diligencing what goes inside. That would be that other process we talked about. That would be a more traditional, is this real estate, a good price with a good net operating income and a good location with fully leased up or whatever. That's a different thing, as we discussed before. In this case, it's really more about understanding, in our opinion, three things. Number one, again, the sponsors, right? Who are the people behind this transaction type? Do they have a history of success? Do they appear credible? Can I check them out? Can I Google them, or DuckDuckGo them, or whatever? It's easier to say Google them, I guess. Can I check them out? And do they have the necessary credentials? Do they have this proven track record of success, delivering on commitments? And it's important to us, I think, in these cases, it really is about reputation. You can't see a number and go into Morningstar and say, well, the 3-year annualized return is this, and it's above the average, and that's good. It doesn't work like that. So you kind of have to spend more time looking at the people and say, do they individually have clear track records of success? It's not hard to figure out in the modern internet and information world. And if something pops up, I wouldn't hesitate to ask them about it. We do a little bit kind of like where there's smoke, there's fire. Not always. Sometimes there's just smoke. In business, things happen, and people, for lots of reasons, make accusations which are not always true. So we need to take all that with a grain of salt. But if we check out people, and when we checked out the trustees, and we checked you out too, Brett, sorry, and pristine, right? But if there is anything there, you really owe it to yourself to ask that question point blank, is, hey, tell me about this situation I see in this record of this history, and it's all online now. So that, I think, is super important and is super easy to do. That would be item number one. Item number two would be looking at the actual legal structure. As I mentioned, it is a structure. It's a wrapper. We are not lawyers. I repeat, we are not lawyers. So we were not in a position to, reach a legal conclusion, anything definitive about it. But, you have phone interviews with the folks that are behind the DST structuring, at least the way the estate planning team does it, right? In that case, multiple phone interviews. We actually, because it's our job and we have the resources to do it. I myself, with two colleagues, flew to the Midwest, Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, of all places, and spent a day and an evening dinner, and then part of the next day with them in their presence. We at one point we were invited to one of their homes. It was very nice. We were in the offices. We met the staff. We talked to the people. We heard it, frontwards, backwards, and turned it all around again, and just got comfortable. You can learn a lot from maybe I'm a little old school, but you can learn a lot from being in someone's presence, looking them square in the eyes, shaking their hand, and just kind of, reading that body language and getting comfortable with them as individuals. And so that's a lot of what we also talked to a few other lawyers that we know. We all have friends and say, hey, have you ever heard of this thing? What do you know about it? Does this sound legit? Does it pass that smell test? This is that common sense approach we used in our title for today's session. Does anything, give you a whiff of like, that seems a little weird. I'm not really quite sure that jives. When we didn't get any of that, we got, I'm not familiar with it. Okay, that's a neutral. And then, I think those were the real things. We did not go as far as trying to get any kind of a legal opinion, because that would probably need to be done in a specific transaction. That would be an extreme situation. We relied on those other two primary inputs for item number 3. Yeah.
Love it. I'm going to try to encapsulate that. So looking at the sponsors, looking at their history of success, right? Obviously doing background checks on the people. And by the way, glad you did, clean background, necessary, for myself, that is necessary credentials, and then track record of delivering on commitments, right? And that speaks to the character part. And then looking for if there's any smoke, checking to see if there's fire, right? Not necessarily meaning there is a fire just because there's smoke, because it's part of the business. And the next thing is kind of we're focusing on is looking at the legal structure. So spending the time not only with the legal team, but talking, working through it, looking at it, although you're not, attorneys, really finding out if the structure can hold, right, on the side of meeting people face to face, and then also doing a little bit of third party evaluation as well, where you're saying, hey, you guys are legal folks. What do you think? Is there anything here that would really cause your concern? Is that a fair summary, David?
That is right. And the third point would be applying that whole approach you just described, right? Working with the legal structure. Also, then looking at the tax code. So again, we're not CPAs, but we know CPAs, and so we asked kind of everybody we sort of kind of know, not everybody literally, but hey, if you heard about this, oh yeah, it's a form of an installment sale. It's kind of like this, but it's kind of like that. And is it legit? Have you seen it before? Yeah, sure, I've heard of it or haven't heard of it. And these other folks do it, but they do it differently. And so just that, and then also we did use, of course, there's a due diligence a set of documentation and background available from the estate planning team, which, if you, pardon me, if you engage with them, this can be made available to you. And so we peruse that again, not lawyers or CPAs, but, to see back and forth with the various IRS and other bodies who would look at certain transactions and say, this is legit. This is done right. No issues here. Move on. Okay. And it's really about, multiple sources of input, multiple perspectives on the same topic, try to like triangulate to see, am I missing something because I'm looking at it only from one perspective. We have our perspective, we're money managers, we see everything through that prism. And so we knew we had to stop and say, hey, let's ask somebody over there and somebody over there and see if we can't triangulate and really get a more of a 360 view of this situation. And then finally, we spoke to some of the trustees as well. Getting to know Brett, getting to know others. My experience has been that professional, credible people don't get involved with, or if they do, they don't hang around sketchy situations very long because they themselves have too much to risk. My credibility, Brett's credibility, other trustees' credibilities. You can only, what's the old saying? You'll only lose your credibility once. The point is you'll never get it back again to lose it again. And so when you just have this kind of this mass of evidence, right? I look for really trying to just identify amass this weight of evidence from multiple perspectives and say, gee whiz, it's the best you can do. Nothing's perfect. There's no guarantees, but you do all you can do.
Yeah, very well said. And I love the part where you say looking at multiple perspectives, right? Trying to get a 3D approach. And that's, we really encourage people, if you're listening to this, is to get that 3D approach now. We have a no cost, no obligation due diligence. What we found is for the folks who wait until they're either selling or about to close and, there's the emotion of selling this highly appreciated asset, learning about this new tax code part of it, learning about this new deferred sales trust, new trustee. It can become overwhelming. So we really try to make it, really two transactions. Your first transaction before the transaction should be, what is the exit plan? What does that look like? Let me underwrite that, do my due diligence on that, and that being the deferred sales trust and who we are and everything that David just spoke about. That didn't cost you anything. That takes some time and some energy, of course. And if you hire your CPA or attorney to look at it, that would cost you something. But again, if you're going to be paying a couple $1 million of tax or whatever the amount might be, it's definitely worth you doing that first, right? And then selling the asset and knowing that you have a good landing, safe harbor place to land. Now, of course, people do call us 30 days to close. I mean, we just did a deal in like 2 weeks. About 3 weeks ago, they called us. We just closed it. So it does happen. We understand that. And we do deliver on that, given that we have enough time inside of the contract to do that. But we do encourage you to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, learn about the deferred sales trust, and get your confidence up, get your advisors on it, because we believe it can make all the difference for you. Any other thoughts on that, David?
No, I think those are the high points. I think, like anything, typically here we're talking about, if they're serial real estate investors as a client profile, selling a piece of real estate may not be a life-changing event. That's kind of a business for them, you might argue. But for most folks, these transactions they're event nodes in their life, right? It's selling a business. It's selling some other highly appreciated asset. Maybe it's an entire life's labor. And I don't know about you, but I would spend an awful lot of time on that. Eventually, I will exit this business. I'm not planning to do it anytime real soon. Don't get excited, anybody. And there will be some transaction, and you better believe I'm going to use my own notes and every resource available to me, and maybe use Brett's skills at the Capital Gains Solutions Group as well to help structure that. It's just being smart. And then the final point I would make there is that I would take the time to seek outside perspectives on it, both legal and tax, to get comfortable. And I don't know, it's not for me to volunteer. I don't want to get in trouble with this, but my sense is that, there's probably clients out there who have done these transactions who might be willing to, have a brief conversation and just get the hey, how did it go? Mr. Jones or Mrs. McGillicuddy went great. It was exactly what they said. We had a wrinkle here. We learned from that. But that would be that missing kind of fourth view, which is be the actual final result. It's that satisfied client perspective. That would be an additional degree of comfort if it's available. I can't speak to that.
And it absolutely is, by the way. We do podcast interviews. We have a couple at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, 3 clients in particular, and more are coming on. I'm finding that I say, hey, I want you to wait 1 year, right, to make sure everything gets fleshed out, and then come on the show. And they're like, great, I'll come on now, but I'm going to wait a year. Some do come on sooner sometimes, or give their initial take on it, and then they follow up as well. But yeah, we have those readily available, all different walks of life, primary home sales, stock, dentists, veterinarians, business sales, real estate, commercial real estate, save, fail, 1031 exchanges. All that being said, David, we're running out of time. So for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, what's the best place, remind them one more time, to connect with you and find you?
I think we've got the website listed down there at the bottom. That's AnfieldCapital.com. You can find my contact information on there. I believe my email should be on there. Happy to have conversations. I mean, if it's about the specifics of an individual transaction, I would very quickly seek to involve, a Brett or there's, I think, a approach whereby cases might get assigned. I myself don't get too much into the details there, but always happy to talk to people that want to get to know myself and my firm and are interested in this transaction type.
Excellent. Thanks, David, so much for being on the show. Can't wait to have you back again. On our next show, we're going to be discussing, you want to tease that, David? We're going to be talking about a topic. What was that topic again? I kind of forget now.
Yeah, no. Well, it's a topic I think on everyone's mind, somewhat germane to this conversation, which is our interpretation of what we think might be the final form. We never really know. It's a political process of the Biden tax plan, as well as some sense of implications for stock market, economy, real estate. It might have fairly broad-reaching implications. And I think there, and not to take us any little further into our timing out here, but for us, with everything so good, the consumer, corporate earnings, the economy, the stimulus, all the things we talked about. We'd normally be on consumer watch at this point. We are not. We'd normally be on maybe, valuation or bubble watch in asset markets. We are not. We are shifting now to the thing that we think will matter the most, and that is political watch, policy watch. It's what comes out of Washington and what comes out of the Treasury and what comes out of the Federal Reserve, both here and globally. In the next 6 months, we think it's a pivot period. If it's the right kinds of policies and they don't shock this economy and they keep us on the right path and there's no policy mistakes, this can continue for quite some time. There's enough fuel in the tank, no doubt about that. But we'll be shifting to policy watch. One leg of that, tax code, that'll be our next session.
Beautiful. What a great plug. We're going to dive in. David, thanks for being on the show. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening to the episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, you struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, to defer capital gains tax on sale of a primary home, business, cryptocurrency, stock, can save a failed 1031 exchange, is the best way for you to exit your assets. So you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to learn more about that. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Thanks everyone for listening, and